We spend a lot of time on this channel relaying as much information to you as we can about the players. But how do you draft a great team? Talking about that right now.
Yeah. Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
What is going on, Headline Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. And like I said in the opening, we spend a lot of times breaking down and analyzing players on this channel, but I don't know if we spend enough time giving you a little bit of those nuggets just to help you become better at overall drafting. So in today's episode, I got a few tips and tricks that you should be following during your fantasy football draft to just make sure you end up with the best team possible. Before we get into this list here, gotta set you a light goal because the light goals are just being knocked out of the park here as of late. How about we set this one at 797? First number that came to mind. Can you beat 797 likes on this video? If you can, I'll give a draft guide to a random commenter down below. So hit the like button, leave that comment down below because we're going to start talking about things that you must do during your fantasy football draft. So let me pull up the list here. Now, I could just have the whole list show them, but then you just pause the video, read the list, and stop watch. I need you to watch the video because that's how you get better. So the first item here on my list is going to be utilizing the queue. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about when I mention the queue? Now, what I like to do, and this is different than probably for every league, it depends how early can you get into your draft room. Some leagues allow you in there an hour beforehand, some a little bit longer. It all just depends. I like to be there as soon as I can. I like to come prepared, and I usually bring my cheat sheets with me. I want to go by my rankings, right? The players in the order that I believe they should be in, not what the site that I'm on tells me they should be in. With that, I'm going to go through the queue and basically fill in my rankings. Sounds crazy, sounds tedious, but trust me, when you're on the clock, it's a lot easier to make decisions if you're just following your queue because you know in what order you kind of want to go. But that is not the end-all, be-all. There's going to be times when players slide, players fall, unexpected things happen, and maybe there's a player at the top of your queue you just don't need right now. Obviously, you're not going to draft your wide receiver 3 when you only got one running back. You have to still play it smart, but it kind of limits some of the guesswork if your queue is properly filled out before the draft even starts. Once it starts, honestly, kind of hard to keep up with because you're supposed to be paying attention to other things going on in the draft. Number 2, follow the draft board. Like I just said, right? You're not going to have a whole lot of time for your queue because you're watching the other players come off the board. And this is especially important when you have one of those picks right there at the turn, right? 1, 2, 11, 12. You're really paying attention because you can kind of gauge what's going to happen in the next couple picks based off of the roster that the other team has. If they've already drafted a quarterback and you don't know if you should draft a quarterback or wait until your next round pick after the turn, well, if they already have one at the team after you, you don't have to worry about reaching for one there early. Get one of those wide receivers, get one of those running backs you need, wait a couple picks, and then take your quarterback. The same thing can be said for tight ends, right? Shouldn't be a whole lot of teams out there drafting multiple tight ends in the early rounds. By that, I'll say rounds 1 to 8 or 10 or so. You shouldn't be having teams taking 2 tight ends. So if they already have one and you need one and they're picking after you, don't reach around early because they're not, did I just say reach around on the internet? Taylor, we're gonna have to cut that out. I don't know if I can, you're not cutting it out. All right. Well, anyway, you can reach around later and then take your tight end quarterback at that spot. That was awkward, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. How about we monitor position depth? And this is pretty important, right? Because we talk about the wide receiver position all the time and how deep it is. The wide receiver position is probably close to about 50 deep with wide receivers that I could make an argument for starting every single week in fantasy football. You can't say that at the running back position. There's maybe 20 to 24 and then a bunch of hope-sos after that. The quarterback position, super deep. 20 guys out there that could probably be your starting quarterback. In most leagues, you only need 12. So you don't need to reach early for some of these guys, especially if other teams around you have already drafted one. You know that's going to afford you a couple more rounds to stock up on the other players that you need, and then you can take your quarterback. How about don't waste picks on multiple quarterbacks, defenses, or kickers? Now, I will preface this is just for single quarterback leagues. If you're in a super flex league, you should probably have 3 quarterbacks on your roster at a minimum by the end of the draft. For everybody else, you don't need them. I just mentioned there's like 20 quarterbacks out there that are probably going to be startable on a weekly basis here this year. Why roster 2 of them? Have that other roster spot be a low-end running back or wide receiver that may get a better opportunity with an injury. And then you have that little lottery ticket on your bench instead of just wasting a spot for a guy that's never going to start other than that 1 week that you need him when your starter's on bye. Well, here's the thing. More than likely, by the time your quarterback's on a bye week, there's somebody on your roster that's not performing, not getting a chance, and you can just drop them, pick up another quarterback, and use them for that week, drop them back, and pick up somebody else when the week is over. Plenty of quarterbacks to do this with, no need in rostering multiple quarterbacks in single quarterback leagues. Same thing goes for defenses. Don't do it, please. Don't roster 2 defenses. Don't roster 2 kickers. Kicker is really the one thing that matters. Find a guy in a high-powered offense that's kicking indoors. Outside of that, don't overthink it. It's still just a kicker, and there's so many variables that go into picking kickers and defenses. Keeping 2 of them on your bench is just wasting spots. Next up, limit early round risk. Think of some of these names here that you could probably get in the first 4 rounds here this year. The likes of CMC, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Cam Akers, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, Chris Godwin. There's a lot of risk right there, and the last thing you want to do in your fantasy draft is have a lot of that risk right there at the start of your draft. If you want to make one risky pick and say, maybe, hey, I'm believing in Saquon Barkley this year, maybe that's your thought. Okay, go ahead and go after Saquon Barkley. But do you also want to have the risk of CMC and Kamara and Akers and everybody else around him? Probably not. You probably need some solid stability right there. And then, hey, Saquon's my one high-risk play. Me, personally, in the first 4 rounds of a draft, I'm not going to take more than 1 risk on a player. I'll take more risks a little bit later. Next up, don't rely on industry ADP solely. How many times have you just mock drafted? Like a ton. You invested a lot of time this offseason in mock drafting, and then 2 rounds into your home league, your buddy Jimmy just decides to take a quarterback that makes no apparent sense. Maybe he reaches and takes Dalton Schultz in the 3rd round, and it totally screws up everything ADP-wise. ADP is a good gauge of where players may fall, but don't solely go into a draft assuming that the ADP, the list in your draft room, is going to be the order that they get drafted in. It happens every year. People are stupid sometimes, and they take some I heard a story the other day of somebody, it was in the comment section, I believe they said they tried to corner the market and take Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen last year, just so they could make a trade later. Come on, don't do that. That's stupid. Don't do that. Don't waste those early picks like that. But it's going to happen. You're going to be in a league and somebody's going to do that this year and be like, damn, Jake just talked about that. It's going to happen. So don't solely rely on ADP. Also, don't want to overly rely on projections either. Let me say this about projections. Do you realize that if you're on a site that has the projections right there in the draft room, do you realize if those were right, that we'd all be just cleaning up when it comes to sports gambling because we kind of knew what to expect? Those things are educated guesses at best. I'm talking at best. You don't know who's making those projections. Does the person that's making the projections even know what they're doing? Does the person making those projections kind of little cray-cray time? You have no idea. You don't know where those numbers are coming from. The last thing you want to do is say, I need a wide receiver. Let me go over there and just sort by receiving yards. Oh, this guy is projected for the highest yards. That's my guy. Don't do that. That's why you need to be prepared early and go into your drafts understanding where do you want to go at certain times. And that's why it's so important to make sure your queue is utilized early on in the draft. Now, usually when I make lists like this, people always want to include, make sure you don't draft drunk. That's not going to happen. For a lot of leagues, there's going to be beer flowing in a lot of fantasy football leagues this year. I fully understand that. If you're serious about winning, though, that's probably another one we should throw on every single list, because when you're drunk, you do stupid things. That maybe then you turn into the Jimmy in your league that just drafts 2 quarterbacks early because you're trying to be. Don't do that. Don't be a Jimmy. Okay? Do we need to put that on a shirt? Don't be a Jimmy? I don't even know. Do we even know a Jimmy? I don't think I know a Jimmy. If your name is Jimmy, I apologize. I'm not trying to insult you, Jimmy. It's just the first name that came out. But these are things that you need to be doing in your fantasy football leagues, in your drafts every single year. They're super important, and they're really going to lead you to a better overall team. Sure, some of them are a little bit tedious, and you don't really want to do that. And Jake, I don't want to log in an hour early. Okay, that's cool. I understand it. You just may not end up with all the best players on your team because you didn't invest the time up front. I had a saying when I was in high school, and I know my basketball coach just ripped it off from somebody else. It was failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And that is very much something you can apply to fantasy football. But these lists are always fun, right? We're just trying to make sure we throw out all these tips and tricks, and you guys can write them down in your notebooks, put them in your mental memory bank, whatever it may be, so that you have them and you can recall them when you're on the clock and the clock is ticking. You don't get that anxiety buildup on the inside that, man, you don't know what to do, and then you start sweating. It's like a cold sweat, and your arms start sweating. It's a bad deal. When you go in there prepared, like we're going to make sure you are here in 2022, only good things can happen. Like I said earlier, our draft guide is for sale on thefantasyheadliners.com. If you're looking to have somebody just do all the research for you, maybe you just want to print out some cheat sheets, no worries. You can do that in our draft guide, thefantasyheadliners.com. Available for pre-order right now, $21.99, scheduled to drop July 1st. Looking forward to releasing that. But for now, hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button. You got that like goal to hit. And if you've made it this far into the video, I have a secret hashtag that I'm going to give away a second draft guide to somebody down below in the comment section that says it, because I want to see who's listening to the entire video. So in this video, the hidden hashtag is going to be hashtag fill the queue. And make sure you spell Q right. Did I even spell Q right? I did. Okay. I didn't even check the spelling of Q on my own sheet before I did it, but we should be good to go. But for now, hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, a great week. We'll talk to you later.
I'm a headliner.